For more than 8 decades, the Chicago Bears have been the NFL. This is their story.
That was Red Grange, the galloping ghost.
Sid Luckman, one of the greatest T-formation quarterbacks in the business.
The monsters of the Midway, they were mean and they were cruel, but they were so wonderful.
You play the Bears, you better get ready. If I was an animal jerk, I didn't care.
I never saw such moves in my life.
All the pace becomes the National Football League's all-time leading rusher. The crowning jewel in their NFC championship.
I was the right guy for that job because it meant something to me.
Not to get theatrical, but I mean, how better can you write a script here for crying out loud?
Nothing is work unless you'd rather be doing something else. I love it.
In 1920, professional football was little more than a collection of ragtag teams eking out a hard scrabble existence. The game was rough and tumble. So too were the men who played it. But a few men saw more than regional blood feuds in the game's future. And in September of 1920, Ralph Hay, owner of the Canton Bulldogs, assembled a group of visionaries to discuss the possibility of forming a professional league. A scrappy young right end named George Halas attended.
Yes, this meeting in Canton on September 17th was held in the Hupmobile showroom in his automobile agency. And of course, there weren't enough chairs for everybody, so we sat around on the running boards of the Hupmobile cars. And in order to join this group, you had to put up $100 for a franchise. I think it's worth a little more than that now.
A.E. Staley, who owned a corn products firm in Decatur, Illinois, came up with the $100 and commissioned Halas to organize and coach his team. The kid could play, too. In fact, Halas set an NFL record, which would stand for more than half a century, when he outraced the legendary Jim Thorpe and returned a fumble 98 yards for a touchdown.
Hugh Blacklock, our big right tackle, I was playing right there, hit Jim Thorpe low and hard, and the ball squirted out of his hands, and I picked it up and started for the opposing goal line, and I knew with Jim Thorpe in pursuit, I knew he was a bit faster than I was, and I knew he'd catch me. But what scared the deuce out of me was that he wouldn't tackle you, but he would take those powerful legs and whip them through your legs and body and would really punish you. So every time I'd run about 10 yards, I would zig. Then I'd run, about the time I thought he would throw his legs at me, I would zag. And I was down the field, zigging and zagging. So it really wasn't a 98-yard line. It was a run as closer to 130.
The Staleys were good, winning 10 games, tying 2 more, and losing only once in the inaugural NFL season. But as the crowds grew, it was clear the team was outgrowing Decatur. Young Halas seemed to have a knack for this football business, so A.E. Staley made Halas a proposition.
Mr. Staley gave Coach Halas $5,000 and said, take them, they're yours. Take them to Chicago, which is a big enough market to support them.
In their first year in Chicago, the Staleys remained just about unbeatable, going 9-1-1, while claiming their first league title. A year later, Halas changed the team name to the Bears.
We only had 18 players, and I, as head coach, took my life in my hands to take one of those 11 players out. They played both ways, 60 minutes, offense and defense.
The old-timers were tough, none more so than Ed Healy, who became the first player ever sold from one team to another, when Halas purchased him from the Rock Island Independents for $100.
If you aren't playing serious, boy, you're going to get belted someplace along the line. You know what I mean? Someone's going to really let you have it and knock you in the 7th heaven.
With little or no protective gear, injuries were common, and a gladiator mentality became part of the game's ethos.
What is this game of football? It's not a toy, it's a game of warfare. It's a case of survival of the fittest.
And survive the Bears did, finishing near the top of the league in both 1923 and 24. But George Halas wasn't content with mere survival. The mid-20s were the golden age of American sport. Giants like Bobby Jones, Jack Dempsey, and Babe Ruth were icons. And while the NFL didn't have a legend of its own, Halas knew where to find one.
In the fall of 1924, the public's interest in football was awakened by the sensational breakaway running of a University of Illinois halfback named Red Grange.
In the mid-1920s, the name Red Grange was synonymous with football in the same way that Babe Ruth was synonymous with baseball.
He was this enormous star, and he became an enormous star because of the media that was available that covered his games and that brought his games into Americans' consciousness everywhere.
Not only did Halas become the first owner to sign a college player, he signed the greatest collegiate ever. It was national news, an audacious and unprecedented move, and just what the NFL needed. Red Grange was a phenomenon. Everyone wanted to catch a glimpse of the famed Galloping Ghost. So the Bears embarked on a pair of cross-country barnstorming tours.
It wasn't that the quality of football was so great, or that Grange himself was so great on these tours, but it spread the NFL gospel from coast to coast, for one thing, and it added cash. Just having money was an important consideration for the Chicago Bears in 1925. And the money that was brought in, playing in front of 300,000 fans in these two tours combined, was significant.
And that went throughout the country. And we played New York, and we had 75,000 people, 10,000 more than the Army Navy did the week before. So that gave you an idea of what a great drawing card Red Grange.
The day after the Polo Grounds game in New York, Babe Ruth came to visit Grange in his hotel room there. This was Babe Ruth in 1925 at the height of his glory.
And he said, "Kid, I just want to tell you a couple things." He said, "Don't pay too much attention what they say about you." And he said, "Don't pick up too many checks."
When the team went to Washington, he got to meet the president, Calvin Coolidge.
I remember President Coolidge greeting us, and the senator introduced us as George Halas and Red Grange with the Chicago Bears. And I remember President Calvin Coolidge's remark. He said, "Young men, I'm glad to know you." He said, "I always like animal acts."
Greetings, fellow football fanatics. Open your big brown eyes and get a load of the world's greatest assortment of powerful, perilous pigskin prodigies. The Chicago Bears, not an animal picture. Lyman of Nebraska. Musso of Milliken. Miller of Purdue. Hewitt of Michigan. Isn't he cute?
By the early 1930s, the Bears were firmly established as the NFL's glamour franchise. Their roster was a who's who of the NFL, including a bruising fullback aptly named Bronco Nagurski.
He was a great football player, extremely strong. You know, he's 6'3", about 245, and could fly.
And now comes that line-smashing behemoth, Nagurski, also of Minnesota.
Incidentally, a 21.25 neck. If you want to see how big that is, measure your thigh. And they tell the story about Bronk. You know, after the first game, he had a great game against Green Bay. They gave him the ball and he ate it. You know, so I don't know.
235-pound football player, all muscle and bone. They were loath to tackle him. I mean, I know several players would let him go by for a 10-yard game and then tackle him from behind rather than meet him head on. In this particular instance, he ran right through the entire team and into the concrete dugout. And that crack is still there.
Nagurski was as iconic as Grange had been 5 years earlier. Once again, the Bears became the class and envy of the league.
When we Packers got ready to play the Bears, they always had a cheer, you know, of goes like this. Bear meat is mighty sweet. Bears are hard to beat. Let's lead them to defeat. And we'd sing that all day long. We were pretty ready to play, you know.
Behind Nagurski, the Bears shut out the Packers to finish the 1932 regular season, tied with the Portsmouth Spartans for the league's best record. But Halas wasn't satisfied with the tie.
So George Halas had this great idea to have a championship game between the two teams. So it was agreed upon by the league, and both teams were scheduled to play the championship game in Wrigley Field. Well, the weather was so awful there that week, so Halas came up with the idea, why don't we have it indoors, and he got the Chicago Stadium.
The venue was less than perfect.
The field was not your ideal field. I remember the odor because there had been a circus in the Chicago Stadium the previous week.
One of our players got sick of his stomach and threw up. Oh, it was bad. We had had a couple of nips the night before, and that smell was too good either. I could hardly get my head in the huddle.
It was a strange game, and it ended on an even stranger note. The game was tied 0-0 into the fourth quarter. The Bears had Bronco Nagurski, the most powerful running back in football, and Portsmouth stopped him 3 times in a row right near the goal line. On the fourth down, Nagurski took a handoff and charged toward the line of scrimmage and pulled up and threw a jump pass into the end zone to Red Grange for a touchdown.
Bronk threw the touchdown pass to me. I was laying on my back in the end zone, and Bronk threw me an end-over-end pass. That was his best pass.
Well, at that time, the rule was you couldn't throw a forward pass unless you were 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Nagurski clearly was closer than 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage when he threw the pass, but the referees didn't call it.
Chicago had made it official. The Bears were the world champions. In 1933, the NFL split the league into an Eastern and Western division. Not that much changed for the Bears. Behind future Hall of Famers George Musso, Bill Hewitt, Link Lyman, Grange, and Nagurski, Chicago cruised to the Western Division title and their second straight World Championship game. Facing a powerful New York Giants team that featured Hall of Famers Mel Hein, Ray Flaherty, and Ken Strong, the 1933 title game became an instant classic.
I do remember listening to it on the radio.
Bears ball on their own 12-yard line.
Because the lead changed so many times. The Giants would score, the Bears would score. It just kept going back and forth.
Pass is intercepted by Rambaugh of the Bears.
The game had just about everything, including a trick play Giants quarterback Harry Newman and center Mel Hein concocted just for the occasion.
Mel Hein was the center. All the men went on one side of Mel Hein. That left Mel Hein open for a pass because the ends were eligible for pass, so he became an end.
Newman took the snap from center, handed it right back to Hein, then turned around and fell down as though covering a fumble.
Mel Hein stuck the ball under his shirt and started walking down the field.
He'd probably be walking yet, except he got excited and started to run.
Keith Molesworth was a defensive halfback for the Bears, and I thought something was strange. He said it looked like Mel Hein was pregnant. He said, I wouldn't have done anything if he hadn't started to run. When he started to run, I just automatically tackled him.
Trailing by 5 points late in the fourth quarter, the Bears turned to Nagurski.
The ball was handed off to Bronco Nagurski, who charged as if he was going to run into the line of scrimmage, but then pulled up and threw a jump pass to Bill Hewitt. Hewitt, another All-Pro and future Hall of Famer who routinely played without his helmet, caught the pass and was about to be tackled when he lateraled back to Bill Carr, who then went on to score the touchdown. Great, spectacular play.
Though no longer a breakaway runner, Red Grange was still a savvy defender. And as the Bears nursed their 2-point lead, the old galloping ghost made the game-saving play.
They threw a pass to Red Bellinger, and Mel Hein was coming alongside of him, get in position for a lateral if he had to, and Red Grange was on defense. He saw that what was coming, and instead of tackling low, he tackled high and pinned his arms to it so he couldn't get the ball away.
George Halas said later it was the best defensive play he'd ever seen in his entire career.
I still say it was the greatest football game that I ever saw or ever participated in.
The Bears were world champs. Again, even more important for the NFL, the game captured the country's imagination.
That game went all over the country, they replayed, and that really was the beginning of the popularity of pro football.
The 1934 Bears were Chicago's best team yet and featured a new name.
A new halfback, Beatty Feather. Beatty was a country boy, but he could run like crazy. They set the first 1,000-yard mark, and Nagurski gave him a lot of blocking, you know.
Beatty Feather still holds the NFL record for the highest yards per carry in a season, at more than 8.4 a pop. The 34 Bears looked unbeatable, finishing the regular season undefeated.
It was a great feeling playing with a ball club like that.
We played 13, 14 straight games, and we were undefeated, and we had a good ball team.
When we won 18 games in a row, which was something. That's still a record.
The title game would be a rematch against the Giants.
It was a toss-up who'd win that game, and the field was icy.
We had worked on our cleats and made them just a little bit pointier than normal. It's illegal, but we didn't do too much. And that's why we were in control the first half.
Nagurski was all but unstoppable on the icy field as Chicago built a 10-3 halftime lead. The Giants seemed to have little hope, but they did have an idea.
Ray Flaherty was our assistant coach. He said that one year at Gonzaga, which is where Ray had gone to school, we won a game by using basketball shoes on the field, on a frozen field just like this. And he suggested that the Giants do the same thing. Couldn't find a sporting goods store open in the whole city. He volunteered to go up to Manhattan College and get the basketball shoes for the basketball team. So we put them in a cab and sent them up there. I think he had to break open the door to the locker room, break open many of the lockers.
Just before the second half started, he had 12 pairs of the largest sneakers he could find, so we put them on.
With new footwear, the Giants had new hope.
When we came out in the second half, some of the Bears got over there and got looking around, and they saw that we had tennis shoes on. They went over and told Halas, "Hey, those guys got tennis shoes on over there." Halas says, "Step on their toes," or the cleats.
The Bears would have spiked the Giants if only they could have caught them. Instead, the Bears spent the rest of the afternoon fruitlessly chasing the sneaker-clad Giants.
They were slipping and sliding over. They couldn't touch anybody. Actually, runner's utopia.
Right away, we said something was wrong because they had good footing, and we didn't have good footing. And they started piling up yardage and getting in position, and they ended up beating us 30-13. They just outsmarted us, I guess. That was about the size of it. It was legal. There was nothing wrong with it.
But it was a tremendous letdown after having won a whole... There's nothing worse than knowing you got the better ball club and not being able to prove it.
George Halas was determined to prove his Bears best. He became the first coach to hire assistant coaches, instituted daily practices, and by 1937 had coached his club to a 9-1 record, the league's best. That meant another NFL title game, this time against Sammy Baugh and the Washington Redskins.
The Bears, in their tradition, boasted a pair of fierce fullbacks, Bronco Nagurski and Jack Manders. Needing a touchdown to win, Baugh sends a long one to Wayne Milner. He collects it and skims along the frozen turf, and the Redskins win the 1937 World Championship.
You know, back in those days, we didn't make much money, and you had to win to make money. And Halas used to tell us that. He says, if you win, you make some money. If you lose, the bruises hurt a lot more than when you win.
No one hurt more after a loss than Halas himself. But the Papa Bear had a plan. He just needed the right player to make it work. In 1939, George Halas drafted a skinny kid from Columbia University named Sid Luckman to run an updated version of an offense called the T formation. Using a man in motion, the T formation dazzled defenses. But it required an almost encyclopedic knowledge of the game to work. Luckman proved nearly as smart as he was strong-armed.
I would give him our game plan, give him the list of players, like on a Tuesday night. And the next morning he'd come back and he'd rattle all those players faster than I could think. I had to get my list out and to check as if he was correct. He was able to absorb those plays in a short time. He probably studied most of the night.
The Bears head downfield again. Sid Luckman, one of the greatest T-formation quarterbacks in the business, gets off a pass.
In 1940, Luckman set Bears season records for both completions and passing yards. Halas finally had his quarterback, and with Luckman running the offense, Chicago was virtually unstoppable.
Remember, we were the only team in the National League using the T formation, and they didn't know how to defense it. We'd put guys in motion, they tried everything. So we was winning games 48-3, 50s, 60s, 70s, and we had a great offense.
It wasn't just Luckman. The 1940 Bears fielded 5 future Hall of Famers.
We had a back named George McAfee, and he was spectacular. As a running back, there may never have ever been one any more elusive than he was. He could run, he'd give you a hit and go, and he'd catch a punt or he'd running play, and he'd run for a touchdown. And they started calling one play McAfee. That's exactly the way it was. Whenever I was in trouble, I looked for McAfee or Gallimore, either one of them. You was a hard-running, tremendous back.
I had the opportunity to play with 8 fellows in the National Football League Hall of Fame. These are rookies now. We had Al Bizey and 40 at guards, Big Liardo at a tackle. We had Bulldog Turner, who later be called Hall of Fame. Ken Cavanaugh, great end. We had Hampton Poole, a great end. Bill Osmanski.
With everyone playing 2 ways, the Bears were almost as big a threat to score on defense as they were on offense. Best of all, the most exciting team in the league was also one of the youngest.
Of course, all of us were in our early 20s, either rookies or playing for the first or second year. You just didn't expect to lose.
On December 5th, 1940, the Bears left the Windy City on a train bound for the nation's capital. 3 weeks earlier, the Bears had lost to the Redskins 7-3 in a game that provoked bad feelings. This time, the 2 teams would meet for the NFL championship.
And on the train down to Washington, the boys usually played bridge or joked around. Every single player had his playbook out. Every single player had his heart set on playing this game. It was like going to war, really. It's a war within a war.
Redskins owner George Marshall made things worse by calling the Bears quitters.
And Halas went out and had a lot of those big headlines, and he had those stuck all over the dressing room. Had all this about being crybabies in the first half ball club. And Halas didn't have to give us a pep talk.
Halas was enraged. So was his team. For the next 3 hours, the Bears beat the Redskins like no team has ever been beaten, starting on the game's second play.
The captain of the team was George Wilson, our right end. He came all the way over to the left sideline, and as the 2 Redskin players were coming, he hit them with probably the hardest block I think I may have ever seen. He knocked them up in the air. In fact, when the game was over, George's wife said, "My goodness gracious, who was that man that hit those people?" He didn't even know. My husband couldn't do that. Nobody hits people that hard, especially George might. Well, it was just the block of all blocks.
The Bears played the game of all games, scoring 21 points in the game's first 13 minutes, and spent most of the second half body-slamming future Hall of Fame quarterback Sammy Baugh.
This is the best passer probably the NFL had ever had. For this to happen is quite a remarkable thing, and my job is to rush the passer, mainly as a defensive end. In the event that the fullback swung out my way, I was to drop off and cover.
Hampton Poole's interception return for a touchdown started the second half scoring frenzy. In all, 10 Bears would score 11 touchdowns, including this gem by Bulldog Turner.
Back in those days, now you kick the ball, and when you kick the ball in the crowd, that was the end of the ball. You wouldn't get it back. Well, the officials get us together and say, now if either team scores this last 3 minutes, you're going to have to run, because if you kick it and you go in the crowd, we got more balls to play with.
Marshall's humiliation was made complete when at 60-0, the public address announcer reminded Redskin fans that season tickets would go on sale Monday.
Well, there was a lot of booing and a lot of disgruntled fans.
It was the T formation with the man in motion at its best.
It was also the most lopsided score in NFL history. But while the Bears had played a perfect game, some say their 1941 team was even better.
And our 40 team wasn't as good as 41.
The 41 team was a juggernaut. The average, 36 points a game. The highest in franchise history. demolishing teams en route to a 10-1 mark and a second straight championship game appearance. The Giants never had a chance. The Bears annihilated New York 37-9. In fact, Norm Stanley gained more yards rushing that day than the entire Giants team. For the second straight year, the Bears were world champions and beginning to look like a dynasty.
The Chicago Bears were the dominating football team. They beat everyone. So we were trying to figure a way to beat the Bears. And our coaches tried to come up with something that would help win. And they came up with an idea that taking our middle guard, who was named Rattlesnake Matheson, put tennis shoes on him, put him up on the back of our middle guard, who was head on the center. He'd jump over the center and grab Sid Luckman, who was the Bear quarterback, before he'd get away from the center. We worked on it all week. We go into the Bear game. The Bears get the ball. He gets up on the back of our middle guard. He jumps over and he catches Luckman before he can get away from the center. We run back like a bunch of high school kids. We think we got it whipped. We're going to embarrass the Bears. They can't get a playoff because he's going to get Luckman every time he snaps the ball. Well, the second play, he gets up on the middle guard's back and he starts to jump over the Bear center, who was Bulldog Turner at that time, and Bulldog raised up with his helmet, boom, just like that, in his groin. Rattlesnake went down. He laid on the ground. He didn't want to get up, but he did. He says, time. He walks over to the bench. He said, give me my cleats. That crap won't work.
By the end of the 1942 regular season, the Bears had won an NFL record 18 consecutive games. A third straight title seemed all but assured. For the second time in 3 years, the Bears faced the Redskins for the league title. Favored by almost 3 touchdowns, the Bears took an early lead on Lee Arto's 50-yard fumble return for a touchdown. Unfortunately, the Bears' mighty offense never did score. Instead, the Redskins gained a measure of revenge for the humiliation suffered 2 years earlier. For the Bears, it was a crushing blow. Not only had they lost a championship, but an undefeated season as well. Even worse, by 1943, the war had come to the NFL. Like most teams, the Bears lost many of their best players to the war effort, including Papa Bear himself. Despite missing some of his favorite weapons, Sid Luckman had the greatest season of his career. At the Polo Grounds, Luckman shattered 2 NFL passing records by throwing for 433 yards and 7 touchdowns, all in front of his family.
It's one of the few games that my mother ever went to. She was always afraid I would play and get hurt. So I was running with the ball, and she's sitting next to my brother and sister. He said, please, Sid, give them the ball. Let them run with it. I don't want you to run with the ball. My mom was that way, and she refused to just go to many games, but she did go to that one. That made it that much nicer and that much more thrilling for me that she was there.
The Bears were the class of the league, scoring more than 300 points. But the military continued to draft players. So Chicago asked Bronco Nagurski, who had retired 6 years earlier, to come back and help his old team down the stretch.
The Army kept drafting, football players. And they drafted, they came to the point where they drafted all our fullbacks so that the Bears were out of fullbacks. And we were getting at the end of the season and we had a chance for the title.
Chicago did make it to the title game. And as if kissed by destiny, they faced the Redskins with a chance to avenge the previous year's loss.
Humbly, I say that's the best game I probably ever played. It was the World Championship in Chicago, playing against Sammy Baugh. They had me catching punts. I caught the punt. I took 4 steps. I broke to the right. I came down the sideline. And who was there? Sammy Baugh, the kicker and punter. I said, do I try to elude him or do I try to run over him? It was a decision. There had to be a split decision. I said, no, I'm going to run over him.
Baugh punts to Luckman. Now watch Sam in the upper left-hand corner. Baugh makes the tackle. His head hits the hard earth, and he's out.
And he didn't get back in the game till the middle of the third period. But by that time, we were ahead by about 41-7. I had 3 interceptions, and I threw 5 touchdown passes. So, those are the things you dream about.
Incredibly, the Monsters of the Midway were masters of the NFL for the 3rd time in 4 years. In 1946, the war was over. Papa Bear was back prowling the sidelines, and the Bears romped their way to another title, whipping the Giants. 4 World's Championships in 7 seasons made the Bears the league's first ever dynasty. What heights they might have achieved without the war will never be known.
And we won 4 World Championships in 6 years, and the thing that was devastating was that the war broke us up. The Monsters of the Midway, they were rough, they were tough, they were mean, they were cruel, but they were so wonderful.
In the early 50s, many of the names associated with the team were gone, but the signature Halas spirit remained.
Bulldozes through the Detroit defense for 24 yards. Persistent, isn't he?
But persistence didn't translate into success, however.
Gets set for the play of the year. The Bears whizzer White while attempting to pass. Spots the Rams about to close in, so backward he goes. The 3 Rams breathing hard on his heels. White sprints goalward, but in the wrong direction. For 51 yards, White hits the backward trail. Then to top it off, he gets hit and fumbles. Ken Kastner scoops up the ball and goes over for the touchdown.
It wasn't until Chicago drafted an explosive receiver named Harlan Hill that the Bears regained their winning swagger.
Harlan Hill's heart-stopping catches are a trademark of the Chicago Bears. Watch this one. Ed Brown sends it up, and Hill's on the other end as he gets away from 2 Colts for a 45-yard touchdown.
Number 87 provided an instant boost to the offense.
Hill, when he first came up, believe me, you didn't like to play against him because he could really go deep. He could catch the ball over the middle. He could run fast. He could block. He could do it all.
Hill continued to impress on the field. But life in the NFL took its toll on the farm boy from Alabama.
I don't know, one time we went out to the Pro Bowl game, and he was a rookie, and he was out there, and he wouldn't say boo, and he wouldn't have a glass of beer, and he just like he was, a real farm boy from Alabama, if I'm not mistaken. And the next year we went out there to the Pro Bowl game. My God, I never saw such a change in a guy in all my life. Smoking cigars, drinking double martinis, chasing the girls and everything else. 2 years later, he was gone, so I guess he must have just burned himself out.
Sadly, Harlan Hill wasn't the only Bear star to burn out bright. Halfback Willie Gallimore would also have a brief but brilliant career.
Crazy leg rookie sensation on display at Los Angeles. It's Willie Gallimore loping for 21 yards.
Will Gallimore would make the most incredible runs I've ever seen on a football field. Looked like the issue was decided, like it was all over, and somehow break out of there, squirt out of there. Backtrack, change direction. He just had phenomenal balance and instincts, and he made the most dazzling plays I've ever seen.
Willie the Wisp provided lots of dazzling highlights. Many of his open field runs came as the defense focused on his backfield counterpart, Rick Caceres. Caceres' bruising style contrasted perfectly with the slashing Gallimore. The 6'2", 220-pound ex-boxing champ didn't just punish defenses, he commanded their respect.
When yards are tough to get, Chicago calls on big Rick Caceres.
Rick's probably the toughest football player that's ever played in the National Football League. If you ever had to meet anybody on the street that you didn't want to meet, that'd be Rick Caceres.
Hated to deal with him, especially on third and short yardage. Because, I mean, if you try to gang up and hit him and you didn't tackle the guy could bust it and go on you.
In 1956, the Bears rode their fullback and his league-high yardage total to the championship game versus the Giants.
The Bears are coached by Patty Driscoll, who took over from owner George Halas and won the title in his first year as head coach.
The 1956 championship had an eerie similarity to the 1934 sneaker game.
It froze the field solid. We came out to warm up. I was one of the first guys to fall flat on my face. But Andy Robustelli had a sports store, and he went and got basketball shoes for the Giant team.
Ill-equipped once again, the Bears lost their traction and their grip on the championship. Shockingly, history had repeated itself. The loss was too much for George Halas, the general manager, to take. 1 year later, he would once again reappoint George Halas, the head coach. Back in command, it was only a matter of time before he returned to his trademark shenanigans.
Anything you could do to get an edge, anything you could do to aggravate, to disturb them. Sometimes they'd give them towels with holes in them, or straggly towels. You see, you had to supply the visitors with all these things. Put itching powder on the bars of soap, which is very childish, but it was just a gag, anything for a gag.
The thing that really annoyed me as a competitor when you went to Wrigley Field was that Halas actually sells seats on our bench to patrons of the Bears, and the rope would be right behind you, and the fans would be standing directly behind you with the obscenities in your ear while you're trying to hear what's going on and play a football game. So it was a terrible place to play.
Halas would do things like that. He had a dog on the sideline that near the close of a game that if he needed a timeout, he had a dog trained to run on the field. It was a little black and white dog.
Opponents weren't the only targets of the wily coach's wrath. Halas had more than his share of tussles with officials as well.
The guy was penalizing the Bears, and Halas had hollering, "You stink," you know, in a few uncertain terms. And so the guy walks off another 15 and says, "How do I smell from here?" You know, that's a true story.
Halas's passion for the game was so intense, the Hall of Fame coach could not refrain from participating in the action.
As I was trying to get up, I saw these brown shoes jump on my hands. Knowing full well who had these shoes, I came up very slowly with my helmet along this brown vest and butted Mr. Halas gently. And with that, of course, the entire Bear bench jumps up, and George puts his arms like this, and he says, "Hold it." And he came towards me, and I never moved. And he threw both arms around me like he was punching. I never moved. And he threw them around me like this, and he pulled me in tight, and he said, "I always wanted you to play for me." And I've never forgotten it.
To play for George Halas meant many things, but mainly it meant to play with ferocity. Aggression became a defining characteristic of all Halas-coached teams.
They were real tough and mean. They had players like Ed Sprinkle, Bulldog Turner, and people of that caliber who would go out of their way to decapitate somebody.
They were the meanest, most difficult team I've ever played against anywhere in Chicago.
George Connor spotted me, gave me a real good shot, and broke that plastic bar and knocked 4 teeth out and broke my nose. That's why I don't look particularly good anymore. But I was always respected the Chicago Bears.
Offenses didn't have to like the Bears, but they had to respect them.
Yeah, they were fighters all the time. They wanted to fight. I think they'd been trained to fight, because every time we had a fight in there, if we get out of there without a fight, it'd be a miracle.
The instigator of many fights was defensive end Doug Atkins. Atkins' freakish athleticism was matched only by his competitiveness.
Doug was the best football player I've ever seen. 6'8", 280, high jump 6'6", and nobody could block Doug by themselves.
I think I blocked him 3 times in 9 years. I think I also blocked him 3 times more than any other back ever did.
By the early 1960s, Atkins had plenty of help from his defensive teammates. This incarnation of the monsters of the Midway became the dominant force in the NFL.
When you walked into Wrigley Field and you had an Atkins, a Bill George, a Larry Morris, an Ed Obradovich, you had some of those gorillas looking at you. It was the damnedest situation you ever went into in your life.
In 14 games in the championship game, I think we knocked out 9 quarterbacks. Now, when I say knocked them out, I mean they left and never returned. Our pass rush was the dominating factor in our football team.
I mean, our defense was one of the greatest defenses ever to play in the National Football League. I think the records would bear that out.
Only one offense struck fear in the hearts of the mighty Chicago defense, their own.
But our concern all year wasn't the opponent. Our concern all year was our offense. We had a saying, when our offense would be coming on the field and we're coming off, we tell our offense, just hold them, boys. Give us time to rest, we'll come back and get you 6.
The Bears' defense was so intimidating, they actually scared their own offense.
Our defense was a dominating defense. I mean, they were some mean guys. I mean, they were tough and they played tough. And I mean, they intimidated us, and we were the offense.
One player that matched the defense's intensity was Iron Mike Ditka. Ditka brought the monsters of the Midway mentality to the opposite side of the line.
Mike Ditka became one of the best pass receivers in the league in his first season with the Bears and was voted the NFL Rookie of the Year. A rugged 230-pounder who can fly, Ditka gets behind the Philadelphia secondary to make the catch. Iron Mike prances home to record a 67-yard scoring strike.
With Ditka's arrival, the Bears had added offensive balance to their defensive juggernaut. The tight end's breakaway speed and scoring ability earned him Rookie of the Year honors. George Halas had the final piece to his championship puzzle. But the Packers, having won 2 straight NFL titles, were in the Bears' way. Halas knew his team had the talent to defeat their rivals. So before their opening game, he made sure his team knew exactly what they were up against.
He said, I have developed a roadmap to the championship of the National Football League. We must beat Green Bay twice to win the championship.
I don't think we held Green Bay in awe like most teams did because we were a very physical team. And in most cases, we would lose on the scoreboard, but on the field physically, we beat them up.
They had 2 world championships. You know, we're going to open up against them. You know, the thing is, they had minus yardage the first half, and we beat them. And in fact, they didn't get a touchdown.
After sweeping the season series against the Packers, all that stood between the Bears and the championship game was the Detroit Lions.
Chicago Bears end the NFL dynasty of the Green Bay Packers, and for the first time since 1956, the Bears are the Western Conference king.
At the age of 68, George Halas was looking for his 6th world championship.
The time, dawn. The date, December 29th, 1963. The town is Chicago, and the winds blow sharp with the edge of winter. But here today, the 2 best football teams in the world meet in a deadline to glory. And for the man in the hat, this is truly a sentimental journey. The name is Halas, George S. Halas. He's coach of the Chicago Bears, champs of the West.
Many considered Halas's team the underdog.
Defensively, we were well matched. Offensively, we were a superior football team.
Y.A. Tittle, Del Schaffner, and the Hall of Famer Frank Gifford posed a lot of problems. But this Bear team wasn't just playing for history. They were playing for their Papa Bear.
I think if you were to take a poll of all the guys, I think not only certainly to win it for yourself, but to win it for the old man. I mean, by that, I mean George Halas.
As they had done all year, the Bears' defense dictated the game, forcing 6 giant turnovers, including Larry Morris's crucial interception in the first half.
We were definitely having problems moving the football, and something had to happen on defense. We had to make something on turnover, something down close to get us in there, and this was the play that did it.
After taking away the ball, Morris then took away the one weapon the Giants could not do without.
I just remember, seeing Tittle being carried off the field. And, when you talk about what was the big play of the game, I think that's the big play of the game.
Tittle would later return, only to have his pass disrupted by the man they called OB.
And it was a perfect situation, and Joe Fortunato called the defense, and he said, OB, watch for the screen. When he started dropping back, I flared out, and put my left hand up, and somehow the ball stayed in my hand. I got down to about the 11-yard line, which eventually turned out to be the winning touchdown.
Bill Wade's touchdown run gave the Bears the win and Papa Bear the title.
Play with the guys that I play with and be a part of that team and be a part of George Halas's last World Championship team. That means a lot.
Coach Halas was not only the founder, he was a coach, general manager. He did it all. And you couldn't help but be in awe or respect for him.
40 years after the birth of the league, the father of the NFL had seen his creation become the national game. Papa Bear was a world champion.
When you think back and realize what he's done for the National Football League, it was nice to win one for him.
The 1960s were a decade of change for the country and for the Bears. Coming off a championship season in 1963, Chicago needed new stars. In 1965, two players who would define Chicago football came into Papa Bear's fold. From the University of Illinois came linebacker Richard Marvin Butkus.
Give me 18 inches of daylight. That's all I need.
And from the University of Kansas arrived running back Gail Eugene Saves, the Kansas Comet. And his groundbreaking and game-breaking talent shined like a supernova. Dick Butkus was in a world of his own, the most ferocious defender of his time. One was silky smooth, the other a bit rough around the edges. For most of a decade, these two players defined the new generation in the NFL.
All right, shift to 44 to a 56 stack. Pow! Watch the play action. Let's go.
Dick Butkus was both feared and revered by his peers.
I call him a maniac, a stone maniac.
I don't understand it. I don't understand why they say things like that.
He was the greatest intimidator that ever played football.
You had to overcome the mystique. It was almost like an odor. He exuded a kind of a presence.
Roses are red and violets are blue. If you got any sense, you'll keep Butkus away from you. He was an animal, and every time he hit you, he tried to put you in the cemetery, not the hospital.
I'm not sure. I think Butkus ate him.
If you remember, Butkus grunted a lot and growled a lot when he was backing up the line. And we sent this rookie center in to play for us, and the first time he came off, his eyes were about like this. He couldn't believe what he was hearing from Butkus. Butkus had him intimidated. He hadn't even blocked him yet.
You play the Bears, and I've heard it myself from different people that they better get ready, you know, and that's all the respect that I need. If I was an animal, jerk, asser, or whatever, I didn't care.
He came to play, and it probably made me a better football player by competing against him in practice because he was tough.
About the only story that I can recall that really got my attention was that after a game, no matter what the weather conditions, he never took a bath. He never took a shower after the game, that he just went in front of his locker and would lie down and lick himself.
Is that true? Makes a great story.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true or not.
That's a pretty good story. We'll we'll leave it a little question mark there.
You can tell when a guy's going to be a great linebacker by his attitude. He's got it. You knew that Butkus had it right from the beginning. Butkus was tough. The name, it fits. It fits. You don't want to put a nice guy over there playing defense. You look for that attitude that the great ones have, and Butkus had it from the beginning.
A knee injury shortened his brilliant career, yet he has a bronze bust in the Hall of Fame and remains the gold standard of linebackers.
See that guy right there? You know who that is, huh?
What's that?
Yeah.
Who was that?
Dick Butkus.
Oh, yeah.
Dick Butkus. He was bad, man.
Yeah.
He was nasty, boy. He was nasty.
I stand before you with deep humility and pride. I'm proud of Chicago, and I'm proud to tell you that
When I played for you, I gave it the very best I could.
Another of Papa's Cubs gave it his best alongside Butkus. In fact, Gale Sayers, in his rookie year, turned in perhaps the greatest single-game performance of all time. On a muddy field, Sayers streaked through the San Francisco 49ers for a record-tying 6 touchdowns.
I knew where I was going and they didn't. It was just, one of those days you like to relive over and over again. One of those days that happens once in a lifetime.
The game capped a season in which Sayers set a rookie record with 22 touchdowns.
I didn't know that 6 touchdowns was tied the record. I didn't know that. I just did it. It was, a great game.
It's perhaps the most indelible memory of Sayers. No fan will forget Sayers' single-game domination. Choosing a single Sayers run as the best is almost impossible. But one in particular stands out in number 40's mind.
The run that I made in probably 1967 against the Baltimore Colts. I go around the right end, come out to the left end, and see a little gap, and go up the middle. Boom, for about a 65-yard touchdown. That, signifies Gale Sayers. That run, I just enjoy seeing it.
In only 7 years, Sayers created an enormous catalog of runs that are a joy to see.
I had the quickness, and the ability to see a hole and get there. Usually when I cut, the next step is usually I was almost going full speed again. I just had that ability to do that.
His ability to elude tacklers was no joke and elicited admiration from all who saw him.
I thought I saw him an amoeba-like, paramecium, split into 2 things, and the defensive people went at the wrong one.
He's a God-given talent, no doubt about it. I had great peripheral vision. There's no doubt about that. I could see everybody on the field, and so I knew where to run, where to cut. In the same way, I had a feel for where people were, because I know many times, many runs, when I look at films, there'd be a fella coming from a blind side, and no way I could see him, but I could feel him.
And he gave me a fake like this here, and my body went one way, my mind went the other way, and something happens to your motor when that happens. It's hard to explain. But my legs went limp, and I had nothing left. But the only problem he made was he went one too many fakes and came right back into me, and I hit him and knocked him down. He said, "Nice tackle, Floyd." And I want to say, I couldn't even tackle if I wanted to. You ran into me.
In 1968, Sayers ran into a season-ending injury that put his career in jeopardy.
They say that once you get a knee injury, you should think about quitting, because a running back very rarely comes back from the type of knee injury that I had. I wanted to prove that one could come back from a serious knee injury within a year. They say so many times, it takes 2 years, it takes 3 years to come back. I want to prove that you could come back, and as I said, I had one of the worst knee injuries ever.
When he returned, he was a different runner, unable to rely on talent alone.
People play with broken ribs, fingers, whatever it may be, but they never shed a tear. They went out there and played.
It was his will that propelled him to his second 1,000-yard season in 1969, cemented his place in Chicago history, and carried him all the way to the Hall of Fame. By 1972, the Bears hadn't had a winning season in 5 years, the longest drought to date in the team's history.
Jeremiah was a bullfrog, Huff.
But with the hiring of new head coach Abe Gibron, there was hope.
Joy to the world. Joy.
Though Gibron could carry a tune, his team hit nothing but false notes. Not that Abe didn't make an honest effort. In fact, he tried everything.
Watch the screen! Watch reversal! Pass! Watch everything! Douglas! Douglas!
Truth is, the Bears were maddening. Bobby Douglas was a perfect example. Not just a gifted runner, Douglas was fearless as well. In fact, in 1972, he set an NFL record which still stands by running for 968 yards. Unfortunately, Douglas was a quarterback, and the rest of the team was going nowhere fast. So in 1975, the Bears said goodbye to Gibran and welcomed a real running back.
Chicago Bears, first-round selection. Walter Payton, P-A-Y-T-O-N, running back, Jackson State.
Though now hard to believe, many Bears fans question the wisdom of the pick. They weren't much happier after Payton's first game, in which he netted 0 yards.
It was devastating because they were dogging me out. Everybody would say, oh, he's going to be a bust. He can't even do this. He can't do that.
Payton hardly had a chance. The Bears were still developing. And even though he was 80 years old, Papa Bear was there to help.
I never will forget the time that we had when we first started out. You came in, we were having a little trouble holding on to the ball.
Hold the ball, hold the ball, hold the ball.
So he came in and said, this is the way you hold it. You got to hold the point of the ball. You got to put it under here so you don't lose it.
Let's see the way you carry that ball.
Like that.
That's right. As long as you get in that, they can't knock that thing. That's the most important thing right there. We had a fullback by the name of Jacady, and he just set a record of 13 fumbles. I showed him this the next season. He didn't have one.
Those lean years that we had, a lot of my talent and everything else was developed in.
The hard times made for spectacular plays. No one gained 2 yards as poetically as Walter Payton.
All those times of running for my life, I was able to run for extra yardage.
Those extra yards accumulated quickly, and even with little help, Payton could turn a busted play into a gem. And while personally modest, Payton's talent was obvious very early.
He won't stand for it if I call him a superstar, but Payton is a great halfback, as evidenced by the fact even in his second year, he is leading the National Football League in yards gained.
Everyone, including the Kansas Comet, wanted to catch a glimpse of this new star. Though no one expected much in a 1977 game against the Vikings because young Payton was sick.
The flu, and didn't think I was going to be able to play because I kind of didn't have the energy or anything else. It was like, oh man, let's just here and get this game over with. I guess the only way you get the game over with, you run the ball a lot. That way time goes by fast, and I realized I took it upon myself, hey, just run it. I have no recollections of that game in terms of what happened. I have never seen the entire video of that game yet.
That day, Payton rushed for 275 yards, an NFL record which stood for a quarter of a century. From that day on, there was little doubt as to what drove Payton.
I think he just wanted to be the best there ever was. That was his pure motivation.
He once told me about his workout routine, his training routine, running those hills down in Mississippi on those deltas and burning out guys who'd come out to run with him, and track guys, burning them all out and torturing himself.
So there was no shades, no trees out there, nothing but dust and dirt.
He had a regimen that was that defied what the U.S. Marines would do.
I brought Otis Wilson up there. Took Hanford Dixon there. They're throwing up because it's a mother.
Years of honing his body like a tool enabled him to use it like a weapon on Sundays.
My college coach taught me that never go easy.
He had a defensive mindset in terms of being a running back of trying to deliver a blow.
It seemed the more punishment he delivered, the better he played.
Payton was relentless, and he ran with a fury. It was like he was mad all the time, and he wanted to punish people. He wanted to just get at them and attack them.
I'm telling you, people just didn't want to tackle him. He punished him.
He's a guy that you didn't want to play against week after week after week because you knew he was going to get you.
Every time he had the ball, it was an explosion on his part.
One time I pulled around the corner and Walter was behind me, and he said, "Don't hit the first guy, hit the second guy." I hit the second guy and sprung him for a long run. So back in the film session, we got a chance to take a look at it. And so my coach said, my offensive line coach said, "How come you didn't hit the first guy?" Walter whispered to me, "Don't hit him. I got him."
I just didn't want everybody else to have all that fun on defense, so I took a little bit of defense over to the offense. Instead of being hit, I kind of attacked people and I hit them.
His forearm is like Popeye's forearm, and if you watch the film, he would use that thing like a club.
I went into the game with one goal. Do not get straight-armed by Walter Payton.
Few defenders ever realized that goal, but then no player ever had a greater arsenal of weapons than Payton. Arguably the most versatile player the game has ever seen, he was as comfortable outrunning defenders as he was catching touchdown passes.
My whole development was to be the best all-around that you possibly can.
There were a lot of great runners. He was the best overall football player I've ever seen. I'm telling you that he was the best overall because he ran, he blocked, he tackled, passed, he kicked. You know, he did everything you asked him to do, and he'd do it. Probably as good a blocker as I've ever seen. And I think that's the greatest compliment you can give the guy who gained the most yardage in the NFL history.
He'd block as hard as anybody I've ever seen, or he'd catch the ball and run with it, receiving. He could do it all.
Rolling out left, being chased by Browner. Stops and heaves the left side of the end zone for Payton over the shoulder. Saved for the touchdown!
Dennis in motion back toward the line. Quick pitch to Waller. Fakes the end around. Waller's going to throw. Man wide open. Touchdown, Dunsmore!
I love the passing plays that I got a chance to throw. Yeah.
Still, there's a reason Walter Payton earned the nickname Sweetness. He moved as if propelled by forces beyond man's control, an angelic grace that belied his warrior soul.
When he'd break out of a pack and get some open ground, he'd make a little jump, actually, and a kind of a stride in midair.
I was quick, but not fast. That's why I developed that stutter step. They didn't know what you were going to do. They didn't know if you were going to go straight. They didn't know if you were going to come at them. They didn't know if you were going to stop. You know, I could break away for 30 yards or 40 yards, but if I had to go 60, 70 yards, I'd probably get caught.
Catching him was one thing, tackling him something else entirely. Payton just never gave up.
I was probably a runner that wouldn't die easy. It's like one of those cowboy movies where a guy is coming at him and then he gets shot once, goes down, he gets shots again, and he gets again and again, and he's still walking. Then all of a sudden, big explosion, go boom, arm over here, arm over there, leg over there, and they still trying to get together. That's the type of runner I was.
You knew he was going to make that one play, one big, gigantic leap. You just waited for it during the game.
His signature leaps weren't just explosive, they were record-breaking. By the time he finished playing, his 110 touchdowns were an NFL record.
We were playing the Detroit Lions, and he jumped over me, and I was standing straight up. And he jumped right over us, and that's incredible.
All of Chicago was preparing for history. Payton was closing in on the all-time NFL rushing record, the granddaddy of NFL records. If Payton felt any pressure, it never showed. Instead, he soared and rumbled as he always had, until only 2 yards stood between him and immortality.
All right, here we go. McMahon asked for quiet. play of the second half from the 21-yard line. Walter needs 2 to break the record. Wide to the left is Galt. McKinnon lines up wing to the right. High formation. Quick pitch to Walter. Looking for the record. Cuts back. He's got it. He's got it with a 25 to the 26-yard line. Walter Payton becomes the National Football League all-time leading rusher, surpassing Jim Brown. But his second carry here in the second half, and that's the equivalent to Hank Aaron breaking Babe Ruth's all-time home run record. And listen to the standing ovation.
Motivating drive for me has been for the athletes that have tried but yet and still have failed to reach that certain achievement, and also the athletes that didn't get an opportunity to, like the Overstreets and the Delaney's and the Brian Piccolos. You know, this simplifies what the game is made of, and what I did out there today is a reflection of those guys, because they made the sacrifices as well, and it's a tribute to me to bestow this honor upon them.
The Bears have always been a singular franchise, and in 1980, Dave Williams accomplished an unprecedented and unduplicated feat, returning the overtime kickoff for a score.
He breaks through to the 25 to the 30, coming to the near sideline. He's to the 40, he's to the 50. Down the sideline, he's to the 30, he may score. He's going to win it. A kickoff return by Davey Williams, 95 yards, and the Bears win it in unbelievable fashion. Davey Williams, 95 yards. Do you believe that? A 95-yard kickoff return, and the Bears are absolutely going crazy.
Unfortunately, that was one of the season's few highlights. A year later, head coach Neil Armstrong was dismissed.
3, 6, go!
What the Bears needed was a man who understood Chicago's tradition. The Bears had the players. They just needed someone who could teach the team how to win.
I wrote a letter to him and I said, listen, I know that you're not looking for a coach. I said, but if you ever are, I said, I would hope you would consider me. I know that I have the same feeling about the Bears you had and you have. And he hired me.
Why, Mike has got the job, and I like his ability to handle himself and to handle other people, and I know he'll do a good job.
I was the right guy for that job at the right time, period, and that's all. You know, I wouldn't be the right guy for any other job, but I was the right guy for that job because it meant something to me.
For Mike Ditka, coaching the Bears was more than a job. It was a passion. Punch in the mouth tough, Ditka demanded more of the Bears. But more important than his raging personality was his heart. He believed in the team.
Mike Ditka is the first guy that came in and said, you know, you guys, we're going to win a Super Bowl. And he's the first head coach that walked in and mentioned the word Super Bowl and meant it.
Nobody loafing. Everybody going full speed. You got to make progress. You got to go forward. Let's go.
With Ditka pointing the way, the Bears got better. A lot better. In a hurry.
I think it started in '83. We won the last, 6 of the last 7 games in '83, and started getting a feel for how good we were going to be. And then in '84, we came out and we went to the playoffs, went to the NFC Championship game in '84. We knew that we had a pretty good football team.
In 1985, the Bears were ready to reclaim their place atop the NFL.
Come on now. All you got to do is want it as much as we know we want it. We want it that much. Let's go.
Chicago cruised to a pair of easy wins in the season's first 2 weeks, setting up a Thursday night showdown with the division rival Vikings.
I think the turning point of the season came on that Thursday night game against Minnesota.
Not only were the Vikings also undefeated, the Bears entered the game with starting quarterback Jim McMahon injured.
Mike just said, you're not playing. You haven't been to practice, you haven't done anything. I'm convinced to this day the only reason he put me in the game was to get me off the sideline because I was bugging the hell out of him. I just kept saying, look, this thing's slipping away, you better let me play. And eventually he just said, all right, get your ass in there.
Evidence from the sidelines looks like Jim McMahon will be coming into quarterback. Spent 2 nights at Lake Forest Hospital for back spasms up near his neck. And he's on to try to revive the Bears offense.
The play was actually a screen pass. But as I come away from the center, I stumbled a bit. And that's when Walter came in and blocked the blitzing linebacker.
Caught him tiptoeing through the tulips, and I just let him smell the roses.
I saw the blitz coming, so I knew the screen wasn't going to be any good. And I just happened to look downfield, and Willie Gault was running his man off, and he got behind him, so I just let it go.
Hurls it deep down the middle. Willie Gault is out there, makes the over-the-shoulder touchdown! All right. The first play from scrimmage for Jim McMahon with an all-out blitz coming at him. He got it away.
That play would have never happened if Walter wouldn't have came off and made that block. I mean, McMahon would have got murdered.
Things were sweet for sweetness. Then, in his 11th season, Peyton had waited his entire career for a team this good. Walter was reborn, streaking for more than 1,500 rushing yards. But as good as the offense was, it was the '85 Bears defense that struck fear into the rest of the NFL.
I can close my eyes today. There they are, right in front of me. Steve McMichael, Dan Hampton, Richard Dent, Mike Singletary with those big eyes staring at me. Off to the right is Otis Wilson, off to the left is Wilbur Marshall. I take the snap, I open my eyes, they're still there. I go to bed at night sometimes. I close my eyes, I break out in a sweat. They're still there. They actually hit you on their way going someplace for a little meeting, and you happen to be in the way. You know, it's like, oh, sorry, Joe, we ran over you. You know, we weren't really interested in you anyway. You're a piece of dirt, and get out of our way. I mean, that's the way you felt.
Hey, man, this young quarterback, man, somebody knock him out for me, will you?
That's what the whole game was all about. It was about shutting people down.
The Bears didn't just shut offenses down, they brutalized them.
I think we were one of the first ones to decide that was the way to stop a passing game, is to get to the quarterback.
Damn, go get him!
A maelstrom of menace and fury, the Bears savaged quarterbacks. The NFL had never seen anything like it. The '85 Bears defense was a sea of wrath unleashed, crashing into QBs without end, without pity.
Buddy Ryan was the first football coach that finally realized that the defense has the offense outnumbered.
When we would line up 8 guys across the line of scrimmage and the offense had 7, guess what? Somebody's free.
You could see when we ran 46 schemes that they couldn't pick up the blitz. I mean, you could literally see before the snap of the ball, and it was 1, 2, 3, and it was awesome.
The best defense I think I ever saw was that '85 Bear team. They were as dominant as you could be. Pat Summerall and I did like 6 or 7 games, towards the end of the season, including the play, and we never saw a touchdown scored against them.
The Bears were a perfect 12-0 through the season's first 3 months. A showdown with the Dolphins, the only team to go undefeated and win a world title in the same season, loomed. Though the Bears lost the game, many players felt it was more a blessing than a blemish.
I don't think we could have gone to the Super Bowl if we hadn't had a loss. So the perfect record means nothing to me.
Fact is, the Bears were having too much fun to worry about anything.
That was a good year for football. I mean, I think not only did the Bears have fun, but I think they made football fun for the whole country. I mean, William Perry, the refrigerator in the backfield. I mean, he was kind of like everyone's hero.
The refrigerator.
For the go-ahead score, in motion Moorhead to the right side. Hand off to Perry, crashes the right side. Touchdown! Look at William Perry doing the high five.
We all like, started barking, and it was unbelievable. It like caught on, and the whole nation, the whole society, they started barking.
By the playoffs, the Bears looked invincible. Even so, they kept their focus.
Whatever we got on our minds, get rid of it, think football. One thing, 60 minutes. Am I right?
Vendetta from his end zone. Bears look at good field position.
Oh, he just missed.
This is the football.
He missed it.
On the field.
All right.
It's Sean Gale.
Holy smokes.
It was more a mauling than a game as Chicago pitched an easy shutout.
The snap to McMahon. He pop flies the right side of the end zone for McMahon. Touchdown! Great catch for the touchdown! Great catch!
A week later in the NFC Championship game, the Bears' assault continued.
Let's go, Jumbo!
McMahon rolling left, looking to deal. He fires the left side of the end zone.
Snowing out here. Yeah, I'd say so. It's really starting to whip out there. Maybe they're cheering for the snow. I think they are. Not to get theatrical, but I mean, how better can you write a script here for crying out loud?
Brock back to pass, the rush on. And hammered down. Takes the ball. Picked up by Wilber Marshall. Go on. Go. And go all the way. Touchdown. Way to go. The crowning jewel in their NFC Championship.
When Wilber got that fumble and it started snowing and we were all running down to the end zone, I mean, that was it. You knew you were going to the Super Bowl. George Halas ordained this, you know. I mean, that was about as unbelievable a moment. I mean, you know, you couldn't be out in Hollywood and say, okay, get the turnover. It's the defense. Turn on the snow. I mean, it was phenomenal.
The Bears have captured the NFC Championship. Fire up the gumbo and clear the French Quarter. Here we come. New Orleans for Super Bowl 20.
The most dominant team of the past half-century was one day away from a world championship, but only a few hours away from an emotional farewell at the pre-game defensive meeting.
You know, Buddy gave a very short speech, and at the end, as his jaw was kind of quivering, he said, no matter what happens, you'll always be my heroes.
They gave me a big standing ovation.
And I kind of started crying a little bit and told Singletary, I said, it's a real shame he's leaving. Anyway, to be continued. So I told Singletary, I said, you know, it's a shame Buddy's leaving. And I looked at Mike, and even though it was dark, his eyes were so big that I realized that Buddy hadn't told him. And I said, well, you know, you got to believe with the season we've had that, you know, Buddy will be gone. And so we went through the film. We always had to watch one reel of film, 46 defense, the Jets were playing it. And Hampton said, I'm sick of watching the other teams try to play the 46. And he turned off the projector, and with that, McMichael picked up one of these chairs, a hotel chair, and threw it, and it hit the chalkboard, but it impaled the chalkboard. It was, I mean, it was about as good a sign as you could possibly ever get. And we all went out, yeah, you know?
The raw power of the moment propelled Buddy Ryan's defense to its crowning glory, the annihilation of the Patriots in Super Bowl 20. The records fell as fast as the Pats themselves. 7 sacks, a safety, and an interception return for a touchdown.
And off to the bridge to the end zone! Yes, William Perry has scored on a 1-yard touchdown run in the Super Bowl!
The 1985 Bears played the game on their own terms. Brutal, bellicose, and ultimately beautiful. Chicago was at long last back atop the NFL.
There's not many opportunities you get together with 50 to 60 guys and become the best ever.
After their Super Bowl season, the Monsters of the Midway remained relentless. Following Buddy Ryan's departure, coordinator Vince Tobin led a defense that was the NFL's top ranked in 1986.
People forget we were 14-2 the year after the Super Bowl. Actually, I mean, I'm such a fan of Buddy Ryan's that, yeah, we miss Buddy, but I think we were out to prove that we could do it without Buddy.
Again, we didn't have one defensive leader. Not like we had one leader on the team. Defensively, I think every group of positions had a leader. You look at the defensive line, Dan Hampton was that leader. Look at the linebackers, Mike Singletary. Look at the defensive back, Gary Fenson. I mean, collectively, those three guys basically made up the heart and soul.
A veteran heart and soul gave Chicago a healthy biology. But how would young free agents affect team chemistry?
It's easy to coach the guys who are tremendous stars in the league, the all-pros. I mean, they don't need a whole lot of coaching. But when you take a young man, a free agent, and you watch this kid develop and grow, and you can see the lights going on in his head where he sees this and he sees that and he learns, that's what it's all about anyways. And now we just happen to have 45 guys like that.
One of the new faces in Chicago worked hard to fill the shoes of Bears running backs of the past. Neil Anderson led the Bears in rushing for 7 straight seasons.
To the left side of the tight ends. I formation backfield. Give to Anderson off right tackle to the end zone. Touchdown!
The Bears played in the shadows of a glorious past. But on December 31st, 1988, they played through the fog to capture one of their greatest playoff victories.
It was kind of amazing. It was one of those days that you could it was eerie feeling. You could see like right at the end of the half that something strange was going on. And it looked like it came out of a movie. That fog came up over the lake side of the stadium. You couldn't see across the football field. Some say that seeing is believing, that the Bears had to face a challenge of conditions that were unbelievable as they fought to protect a 17-9 halftime lead. I played in rain and mud, but nothing like that. Circumstances of the weather, probably had a little bit to do with the outcome of the football game. Each New Year's Eve, people sing, "Should Old Acquaintance Be Forgot and Never Brought to Mind." On New Year's Eve of 1988, all of Chicago sang, "Bear Down." The Bear Down mantra was embodied by Mike Singletary, who led the Chicago defense with all-pro play and all-pro spirit.
Hey, baby, we're going to be here all day, baby. I like this kind of party. I like this kind of party, baby.
Singletary was drafted by the Bears in 1981. Playing for the franchise that invented the middle linebacker position, Singletary led the famed 4-6 defense. An 8-time All-Pro and 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, his career on the Midway carried him all the way to Canton.
I want to thank everybody that I ever played with, the Chicago Bears and in college and in high school, because all of those guys made a difference. All of those guys contributed to me being here. And all of those guys are part of this team. I want to say special thanks to Dan Hampton.
Hampton reached Canton in 2002. The man known as Danimal was a 6-time All-Pro, and like Singletary, an anchor of the defense.
They're great players. I mean, I think all the great defensive players in the Bear history, at least the time I was there. Just guys who played at top levels all the time.
Hampton was the blood and guts of the defense. The guy that go out there and play with the broken arm, the broken leg, the bent up fingers and knees and all that.
As I leave here today and I go back over and I walk into that sacred ground, I'm thinking about everyone I played from high school to college to Chicago. Like I said, today you know why I've never walked alone. God bless America and God bless pro football. Thank you.
While former Bears greats made grand exits, a new generation was coming to the stage.
With the 9th choice in the NFL Draft 2000, the Chicago Bears select Brian Urlacher, linebacker, New Mexico.
Urlacher reached the Pro Bowl in 4 straight seasons and added his name to the roster of hard-hitting Bears linebackers.
Brian is, to me, first of all, a really gifted athlete, first and foremost. It's the intangibles, and to me, it's just a matter of how much he wants to get better. How far does he want to go? How much of an investment does he want to make? Because that's really what it comes down to. But I see a kid that's really having fun. That's what a middle linebacker has to do, particularly the one that plays for the Bears.
I wish I was as mean as Dick Butkus and as smart as Mike Singletary. If I did, I'd be the best linebacker ever. I think I'm different than both of them. I'm kind of relaxed and just kind of go out there and hang out. I play hard, but I'm having a good time when I'm out there. I want to make a play, help win the game. You know, anytime as a defensive player, you can contribute. I think making a big play, an interception, sack, anything that you can do to make a change the course of a game, you know, just even momentum, you know, anything like that is huge.
Number 54 played alongside Roosevelt Colvin, who set a team record with double-digit sacks in consecutive years. They were joined by tenacious linemen like Ted Washington and Keith Traylor.
And he is rumbling. 48 side. Pass it off. 50. Traylor looking for help. The big ugly with a big, big interception and rumble down the right side.
The Bears reached the 13-3 mark in 2001, thanks in part to the A-Train, Anthony Thomas. He became the third Bear rookie to rush for over 1,000 yards and earned Offensive Rookie of the Year honors. Week 7 of 2001 captured the essence of a magical season as the 4-1 Bears faced the 4-1 San Francisco 49ers.
Back to throw. Shane Matthews has time. Into the end zone. Terrell has got it for the touchdown. The rookie from Michigan.
After being down 28-9 in the third quarter, Chicago rallied with 3 second-half touchdowns to force an overtime that only lasted 16 seconds.
Short set, quick throw, slant. And it's going to be intercepted off of Owens. Mike Brown's got it. He's got it. 15. He's to the 10. To the 5. To the end zone. Mike Brown has intercepted the ball. The Bears have won. This is absolutely incredible.
The entire Chicago Bears sideline is in the north end zone, and Soldier Field is absolute pandemonium. Way to go, Bears.
Off the hands of the best player on the 49ers, Terrell Owens and Mike Brown went into the end zone.
Bears fans gave Mike Brown a standing ovation. The very next week against Cleveland, he gave them an encore. Down 21-7 with under a minute to play, the Bears needed another midway miracle.
We got 24 seconds and one timeout, guys.
Let's go, boys. Matthews stands in the pocket, steps up, heaves the ball, down into the end zone. It's going to be a tip ball. James Allen! I don't know, did he catch it? He got it! I think James Allen caught the tip! This is unbelievable! We thought last week was unbelievable. This is unbelievable!
The most unbelievable play of all came in overtime, courtesy of Mike Brown.
Ball is tipped up by Brian Robinson. Mike Brown is going to score another touchdown. Mike Brown for the second consecutive week.
The 2001 Chicago Bears season began the second century of winning for a first-order franchise. For over 30 years, Soldier Field has been home for the Bears, and a second home to fans who spend their Sunday afternoons in Bear Country.
We're dyed-in-the-wool Bear fans. We've had our tickets for 40-some years.
Chicago Bears flag up there is the only flag you'll see down here that's got the Super Bowl emblem on it. It's not a store-bought flag. It's a flag that's made by my wife. There you go. You can't beat that with Soldier Field in the background, Chicago skyline. Don't get no better than this. We love Soldier Field.
After a major renovation, there would be more of Soldier Field to love. The new construction complemented one of football's most recognizable landmarks. The Bears unveiled their new stadium in 2003, and a year later they introduced a new head coach, Lovie Smith. whose first order of business was to rekindle an old tradition.
Looking at our goals for the program, the number one goal we'll have is to beat Green Bay.
Coach Smith lived up to his promise in 2004 as his young Bears manhandled the Green Bay Packers.
Grossman gonna go to the yard 5 steps. Now rolls to his right. Open man to the 5. Brown down! Bulldozes his way into the end zone. Power play set up out of the eye. They turn the hand off, and he's in for the touchdown. Far under center, Mike Flanagan extends the hand off. They get a move on. Green. Strips it free. It's loose. Picked up by Mike Brown.
Mike Brown helped to secure the 21-10 victory on the second longest fumble return in Bears history. The longest return was by George Halas himself, the man who started football's oldest rivalry. Through the years, Chicago players have received a warm reception in a city known for its freezing temperatures.
Believe it or not, when I first came to Chicago, I hated it. They're playing up in that cold place. You see all those snowy games with, smoke coming out of their mouths.
Despite the climate, players like Walter Payton found fans whose loyalty to the Bears was as relentless as the Chicago winters.
When you were drafted by a city, you developed a love affair with that city, and that city developed a relationship with you.
Being from Chicago, I've always been proud to represent the city.
When I first got there, people, right away, hey, you live in the best city in the country.
Everywhere you go, it's all about the Bears. It's all you see in the paper, and the fans are excited, and this is a great football city.
Every football city has a founding father, and Chicago had Papa Bear.
George, when I met him, was his own press agent for the Bears. He did his own coaching. He played right end. He signed the players. He did his own scouting. He ran the concessions. He was the guy that looked out for the police and everything at Wrigley Field. He was a one-man gang. There would be no football league today had it not been for George Halas. There's no doubt about it.
Boys, Mr. Halas was a man of his word.
This letter means as much to me as anything I've ever received in my life. My dear Sid, I love you with all my heart. And I said this to you last night as I kissed you. I realized 44 wonderful years of knowing you was summed up by 7 words. My boy, my pride in you has no bounds. You were the luster to my life that was never tarnished. My devoted friend, you have a spot in my heart no one else can ever claim. God bless you and keep you, my son. I love you with all of my heart, George Halas.
He's a very, very warm person. And you can't help but like George Halas. I love George Halas.
The Bear tradition flows through the players and coaches who have joined this football family.
Most mornings when I get up and walk into Halas Hall, I'm on a natural high. There's chill bumps up my body. You see the pictures of Butkus, Sayers, Hayton. It's really easy to take your players down memory lanes to just let them see the tradition that they're trying to continue.
The old memories abound, from the Galloping Ghost to Gallimore to Iron Mike, all American quarterbacks and free spirits. The Hall of Famers and eternal heroes will always be remembered as they inspire the next generation to wear Chicago colors and make new memories as Monsters of the Midway.